Hey everybody, welcome back to another fun and exciting Algebra 1 class. Today we are going to continue into Chapter 3, Lesson number 1. And what we're going to do today is now what we learned in the last lesson where we are taking the points and we're putting them onto the Cartesian plane. We're actually going to find the points this time. And how are we going to do that? What we're going to do is we're going to solve equations. And when we solve equations, we are going to get ordinate points. Those ordinate points are going to go onto the graph. I think they call them ordered pairs in the book, or ordinate points, and those ordinate points are going to basically go onto the Cartesian plane. So let's go ahead and look down here, and we have an equation right here, and it's y equals 2x plus 4. Y equals 2x plus 4. And if you notice over here, I have something set up right here. This is what we call a table of values. That's on page number 95, a table of values. Now, we're going to figure out how to use this table of values in just a second. But every time, at least for right now, until you learn more ways to do it, every time you need to solve one of these, you need to take your equation, write it down, and then you need to write a table of values next to it somewhere because you are going to use this, okay? Now, on page 95 in your book, there are some steps to solving. I don't love the steps that are in the book, okay? They're okay. There's some problems with them, though, that I don't think that you're really ready for. I don't think you're going to totally understand. So I have kind of rewritten them, and so I want you to write these down. The first one, step number 1, graphing linear equations in 2 variables. Step number 1, the first thing that you do, develop a table with random values for x or y, okay? Doesn't matter if you do x or y. Develop a table, the table of values that I was talking about, with random values for x or y. Now let's talk about those random values. What does that mean? Well, you come back up here to your equation, to your table of values, and you just put a random number, any number, in for the x or for the y. Now, let me show you some things here that will help you to kind of figure out maybe which number should I use. You said random, so I'm going to use 1,000. Okay, don't use a 1,000. That will be really hard to graph, a 1,000. All right, so we're going to choose numbers that are easy to graph. We want to choose small numbers, easy numbers to put onto our graph. Now, if you think about your graph, each one is one space. You don't want to count 30 spaces over, okay? Because if you do that, you're going to need a big piece of paper. So we want to use small numbers, numbers that are easy to count. One number that I always like to use, I always like to start with the number 0. Okay, so we're just going to put a random number in for x. We're going to say x equals 0. And you're like, where did you come up with that? I don't know. I just, out of my head. I always like to use the number 0. So I'm just putting in a random number. Now what we do with that random number is we actually substitute it in. That is step number 2. Substitute in your value and solve the equation for the other variable. Okay, so substitute it in. So we picked a 0. So now I take my 0 and I put it right there. So now I'm going to have y equals 2 times 0 plus 4. I just substituted it in. Now, what I want to do is I want to do that because that's the first thing that I would do in my order of operations. So I get y equals 0 plus 4, y equals 4. So when x equals 0, y equals 4, and we would write our 4 over here. All right, so that's our next step. And then we're going to look, step number 3, repeat the process 3 times. Yeah, we do it. We have to do it 3 times. In other words, you can't graph your line with 1 point. you need at least 2 points, and I always do 3 points because 3 points checks your line and verifies that you are doing the right thing. So just trust me, you want to do this process 3 times. So let's start over again. I'm not going to erase that because I'm just going to pick another random number. I like, again, easy numbers. The number 1 is an easy number. Okay, so the number 1. All right, so y equals 2 times 1 is 2 plus 4. Y equals 6. When it equals 1, y equals 6. Now, 6 is starting to get kind of big, not really, but so if we go to a 2, what's going to happen there? And you can do it, you can try it to see what happens, just kind of test it out. That was a 6, okay? So if I put a 2 here, 2 times 2 is 4. 4 plus 4 is 8. So we could use it, but we're getting bigger. Let me show you a different thing that we could do. And maybe you hadn't really thought of this, but we could put in a negative 1 here. We could say x equals negative 1. Watch what happens when we do negative 1. When we multiply this, we get negative 2 plus 4. Negative 2 plus 4 is 2. So our y is 2. Y equals, and y equals. Okay? All right, so we have 3 values. Why did I pick those 3 values? If you look in the book on page 95, you'll see this example. Why did I pick those 3 values? Because those are 3 really easy values to pick. I could have picked the 2. 2 and 8 would have worked. Okay. Now in the book they don't show you the 2 and 8, but the 2 and 8 is also on the line. The 2 and 8 works. Any value you put in for x will fall onto the line that we're going to draw in just a second. So now we've done it 3 times. We have 3 values for x and 3 values for y. Where did we get our values for x? Out of our mind. Where did we get our values for y? Out of the equation. Okay? And just like I told you before, you can't solve it with 2 variables. You can't. That's why we had to pick random numbers for x, because we couldn't solve this equation. We can't solve that equation unless we put a number in for x. That's the only way we can solve it. Okay? All right, so now let's go back down and let's look at what our next step is. After we repeat the process 3 times, we did. Number 4, plot the points on the Cartesian plane. Okay, so we'll go back up here, and these are our points right here. Okay, so there's 1 point, there's another point. So here's our, let me circle this. This is our first point, 0, 4, and let's write them like we do, 0, 4. Okay, so 0, 4. And then we would have 1, 6. And then we would have negative 1, 2. So those are our points. Now we want to put those points onto our Cartesian plane. So let me go ahead and switch over here to math paper, and we will go ahead and do those points. Let me write those points over here too so you can see them. So it was 0, 4. It was 1, 6. And it was negative 1, 2. All right, so let's go ahead and graph those points. So 0, 4. So 0 means we don't move on the x. This is the x, and this is the y. Okay, so we don't move on the x because the x is 0. So we only go up 4 spots. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're going to put our point right here. Okay, that's 0, 4. Now we're going to do 1, 6. So we're going to go over 1 spot, 1, whoops, sorry, erase that instead of drawing a new point. There we go, 1 over, and then 6 up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right up here at the top. And we're going to put a point here. And then next we will do the negative 1, 2. So negative 1, 2, 1, 2. Now, if you notice something, all of those points are going to be on a straight line. And if I take my line, sometimes it's a little bit hard for me to get a line. There we go. That line goes through all three of the spots, all three of those dots. So that is our line for that equation. So if we go back down here and we look at this, we will say our last one says, it's a little bit hard to see, but we connect the dots. And that's what we did. We took our line, okay, our purple line, and we connected the dots. And that gives us a line. That's what we're supposed to get. And then label your line. So we'll come back over here to our line and we're going to label the line. What does that mean? Well, you just take and you label it with the equation. So you would just write the equation y equals 2x plus 4. And so you just write the equation next to the line. That's labeling the line. So that line is that equation. You say, well, what if we use different numbers? Well, let me show you a different number, okay? Let's use -2. So let's say x equals -2. So let's say 2 times -2 plus 4. -2 is, -2 times 2 is 4 negative plus 4 positive gives us 0. So if we use -2, another set, so we're checking this, another set would be -2, 0. Now let's see where that lines up, because I told you every single point is going to be on the line. So let's look, -2, 1, 2, 0, right there on our line, just like I said. Any point you put in there, any point you pick 1,000, it will be on the line somewhere. Wherever 1,000 hits, that's where it'll be. Okay? If you pick 6, if you pick -10, it doesn't matter what you pick for x. When you plug it into the equation, it will be on that line somewhere. It has to be on that line somewhere. That's a line equation. And so every number that you pick, every random number that you pick, will graph onto that line. It has to. Okay? So if you miss, and that's the way to check those ones, by the way. That is how we check, by putting in another point. Or you could just go to your line and you could say, oh, look at this. Here's a point right here. Let's check this point. So what point is that? It's -1, 2, 3. So it's -3 on the x, 1, 2 on the y. And so let's check and verify, is that one really going to work? Well, watch what happens when we plug it in to our equation here. So if we put -3 in for the x, 2 times -3 plus 4. What's 2 times -3? -6 plus 4 is, oh, that should have been a -2, by the way, because that's negative. We're going left and down. So that's -2 right there, -2. So when we put in -3, we get -2. There it is. -3, -2. There it is. Every single point we put in there will be on the line. It must be on the line. If it's not on the line, you've done something wrong. Okay? So review back over those. You can go back and watch the video again if you need some help. But there's your steps. Go through each step and then just follow your steps. Just go piece by piece. Don't go by the steps in the book. Okay, I don't love them. Go by these steps. These will help you a little bit simpler to be able to get. Now the steps in the book have you do the same thing. You're doing the same thing. But I think the ones that I put on there are just a little bit better as far as keeping it in a logical progression there for you. Okay? All right. That's all I got for you. We'll see you later. Have a good one. Bye-bye.